The recording is starting. And again, I want to thank you for offering to make time to meet with my students here today. Looks like we don't have any that have joined us online, but we've got a 30 or so here in the classroom, and I will share the recording with my other classes as well. This is an introduction to business class, so we cover everything you can imagine related to business, and we're near the end of the semester, so the students have been learning about entrepreneurship. This week we're learning about different forms of business ownership, all marketing. We've talked about all sorts of different things. So this opportunity to hear from you and hear about your experience is really unique and special, and we really thank you for dedicating your time here today.
My pleasure.
All right. And we can start off with whatever you would like to share. As you might have seen, I sent Elise a list of questions that the students had come up with. So we've got those to refer to and go through. But let me just start with asking you, Steve, what you would like to share.
Well, I guess maybe introduce myself. Do they know who I am? Do they have an introduction?
Yeah, well, I have explained that you started Paylocity back in '97, I believe, and the company went public, and that today you are a philanthropist doing good work around the world, and that is about the extent of the detail I've gone into.
Okay, so I'll give a little bit more color. I am chairman and founder of Paylocity. I'm also co-chairman of Wayfarer Studios, which is a movie company. My partner is Justin Baldoni, who is known for Jane the Virgin. He's currently making, or I guess I should say, we're currently making a movie called It Ends With Us with Blake Lively and Justin. I also am a partner in a company in the UK called PayEscape, and I'm a founder of a company called Blue Marble, which I sold back to Paylocity. I'm an investor as well as a philanthropist. So that probably covers a lot, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions.
And you're zooming in from Illinois today?
I am, although I might be close to Indiana by the end of the call.
I see, okay. All right. All right, I hope there are no laws about taking Zoom over state lines or anything like that.
I hope not.
Okay, so that was just a silly joke. So, oh good, we do have a couple online participants, wonderful. So for those just joining us, Steve has given us a brief introduction, and I met Steve at a conference called the One Planet Summit a few weeks ago. In fact, in over 20 years of teaching, it was the first time I ever had a substitute teacher so that I could attend this conference. So these students, were inconvenienced for a day that I wasn't here. But that's where I met Steve. And I would like to ask Steve, what was your experience at that One Planet Summit conference?
It was very well done. I thought there's some interesting speakers. I like a little bit more interactivity, so I hopefully will leave a little bit of time for people to ask me questions today. But I thought it was well put together. They had some very interesting people talking.
Okay, very good. Well, we have plenty of questions, so if you want, we could just start going through the student questions if you're okay with that.
That would be great. All
right. Well, let me go ahead and bring them on the screen here. Let's see. Got to get to the right screen. There we go. So I've categorized them in the way that seemed most logical. The first group of questions had to do with getting started as an entrepreneur or as a person in business. And the first, yeah, go ahead.
So the first question, is there any advice to give someone who doesn't know where to start? Start with what you love. Start with something you know. I think it's much easier if you have some experience. I've done a lot of different things in my life, and I've been less successful with things I don't know anything about. So years and years ago, I started a Chinese restaurant. I lost everything I had, And it didn't help that I really knew very little about the restaurant business going into it.
Okay, makes sense. So Paylocity was not your first business then?
As you said, that gets to the second question. No, when I was in college, I started my first business, which was a painting company. I also did food fairs, and as I mentioned, started a Chinese restaurant. So I had a few businesses before I started Paylocity.
Okay, so then I guess that would make you a serial entrepreneur.
I also later on did sell cereal or gluten-free baking mix. Yes.
Okay. All right. And so tell us, I mean, you said that the Chinese restaurant did not really work out. So when you started Paylocity, what was your financial situation at that time?
Well, I had the Chinese restaurant from 1991 to 1994. I started Paylocity 3 years after I sold the restaurant. I just really gotten back on my feet. I had just enough money to start Paylocity. I'd saved up $70,000, and that's basically all I had. I put all of that into Paylocity, and then I worked for a year and a half for no money. My wife was working. We lived on her salary, which wasn't a lot, but it was enough to pay the bills. And it wasn't until 18 months into Paylocity that I took my first paycheck. And within 3 years, my wife, 3 or 4 years, my wife retired and never worked again up until recently.
It sounds like that took a lot of faith on your part and on your wife's part as well.
Yes, I had experience in the industry. I worked at different payroll services. I started in the payroll business in 1989, worked for a company called Robert F. White, and then I worked for a few other companies. The most recent one was a company called Rapid Payroll. Actually, there was another one I worked at. There was called Your Payroll Service, just shortly before Paylocity. But I worked for about 4 different payroll companies prior to working for Paylocity or starting Paylocity. So I knew the industry. I've been very successful in the industry. So that helped me have more confidence that I could do this.
So when you did start Paylocity, how did you start it and what were the steps that you took?
So I came back. I was working for Rapid Payroll. They were a software company, and they had a product called Rapid Pay, and they also had their internal payroll service that they ran, and I ran sales for all of that. They sold out to a company called Paychex, which is the second largest payroll provider in the world. I was left essentially without a job. I came back to Chicago, and my goal was to start a payroll company. And I tried to buy 3 different licensees of Rapid Pay, which was a DOS product. Does anyone even know what DOS is? Raise your hand if you know what DOS is or was.
DOS? Anybody? No?
Okay, so DOS was the operating system before Windows, and you guys probably barely know what Windows is. And so this was an old technology, even in 1997. And I was very fortunate that it didn't work out that I could buy that old technology. I ended up licensing a Windows product, and that's how I started Paylocity. It was really a brand new thing because Windows was cutting edge at that time in 1997, at least in the payroll business it was. And so that was what I started with. I started with this licensed product that actually was so new it didn't work that well, and then built it up one client at a time.
Great. Okay. If it's okay with you, I'm going to read the questions off of a different monitor here so that we can see a little bit more clearly.
Sure.
So the next question's pretty insightful. How did your environment help or hinder your growth when you were starting your business?
My environment, what do you mean by my environment?
Well, that was the way the question was presented. I think we've talked in the class about both the internal and the external environments of business. So I think primarily everything around you, the economy, your family, anything that might have been external, that might have influenced.
I was married, which was good. And my wife supported me, so that was very, very good. I came from a stable family. I'm very close to both my sisters and my parents. So that was helpful. My best friend supported me. Actually ended up came and worked for me, and he's now worth hundreds of millions of dollars. because he did, and maybe I am worth more too as well. It worked out well for both of us. So I had good friends and good family. That was hugely helpful. At the time, the economy was stable, the environment was stable, so I didn't have a lot of issues. There was no wars going on. We were politically, I think, more stable than we are today. So all of those things were good. The other thing that was actually quite good, and I didn't realize that, is interest rates were relatively high. And that helped me my first several years, my first 10 years of business. We made a lot of money on interest. And so that was a very, very important thing, as it turned out, because that paid for my initial software development in the early 2000s. The other thing that was really amazing for me in terms of timing was, at that time, it was relatively easy to license a product and get out in business and compete. It's harder to do that today. The payroll and HR world has gotten more complex, and it's now web-based as opposed to PC-based. So it's become much easier for people to be national players. And so there's more national players competing now, which makes it harder for local players. So I guess my timing was good in multiple ways.
Excellent. Okay. Well, the last question in this getting started category is, what skills have been most beneficial to you?
I was an excellent salesperson naturally, and that's how. So I knew how to get new clients. And then what was interesting is I also turned out to know a lot, or was kind of a naturally gifted programmer. So what made me uniquely successful was the fact that I would go actually write programs or custom reports at night or during the day when I had time, and then also sell. So most people do one or the other. They don't do both those things. And those are, at least for the business I was in, a technology business, sales and technology were the two roughest positions to hire in. And because I was capable in both those areas personally, it made it a lot easier for me.
Okay, great. Yeah, we've had a chapter on information systems and a couple chapters on marketing. So it's great to hear that those abilities were very important for you. All
Yeah,
right.
I think technology is still an important thing.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, maybe even more and more so as time goes on. So the next category here is motivation and priorities. And the first question is, what would you recommend us young adults think about moving forward into the business world?
Well, so I'm 58 now, so older, I have become much more interested in faith and religion as I've gotten older. I think that I think differently than I did when I was young. When I was young, I just wanted to make money. I wasn't unethical per se. I think I always was a fairly ethical person, but I didn't think about spirituality or values as being the most important thing. I now think that. So I would say, figure out what your values are, serve the world in everything you do, try to make the world a better place. I don't think there's any value at all in making money if you're doing something that's hurting the world.
Okay, that's something we've talked about a lot: ethics, social responsibility. And even from the very beginning of class, we've talked about, what is the purpose of business and making money. It's really only a tool, right? It's not the end result. It's just a tool that you can use to help self-actualize.
So for me, when my company went public, well, not right away, but shortly thereafter, I became a billionaire. And when you have that kind of money, it makes you think a lot about what is the use of money. And for me, there's no purpose in being absurdly rich unless you can use it to serve the world. And I would actually say, and this is probably strange coming from a billionaire, the world should not have any billionaires. The extremes of wealth and poverty make no sense. So I'm in the process of actually giving away the majority of my money over the next, let's say, 15 years or so.
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't use the term billionaire in describing you to my students. I did provide a Forbes sort of summary of your background. So some of them, if they read closely, they might have found that in there. But thank you for sharing that perspective. You might be the only billionaire I've ever met. And it's wonderful to hear you say that you think the world would be better if billionaires gave away large sums of their money?
And you know what I think would be better is if there weren't billionaires in the first place. And so in the future, I think the business structures would be different. So the reason I'm a billionaire is because when Paylocity went public, I owned 51% of the stock, which was a very high level for a company going public. And that's because I hadn't raised a lot of money over the years. But I think that, again, that level of wealth is not something I could ever spend. And it actually can be a little bit of a burden. Well, I know people are probably wondering how could being a billionaire be a burden, but it can take if you're not careful, you can get lost in the wealth or think that the wealth is more important than other things. And to me, the only true wealth is spiritual wealth.
Okay, well, that's very profound. So something for us all to think about. And I think it ties into the next question here very nicely. How did you find your why, and what inspired you to be the person you are today?
Well, the most important element of my life is my faith. I'm a Baha'i, a member of the Baha'i faith. Our really underlying belief systems is really all around the oneness of humanity and creating world peace. And so everything I do, both in philanthropy and business, is around my Baha'i values. So, for example, we started a foundation, and the foundation is all about the oneness of humanity. So we support a lot of women's rights causes, supporting women, people of color, both Native Americans and African Americans. For me, it's really important to create justice wherever we can, and to give people opportunities that haven't traditionally had them.
Okay, now, so for context, you mentioned you're a member of the Baha'i faith. Full disclosure, so am I. I, make my students aware of that on day one of my courses. But were you a Baha'i when you started Paylocity?
I was not a Baha'i. I've been a Baha'i for 8 years, so almost 9 years. It'll be 9 years in February.
Okay.
So I became a Baha'i in 2000. My company went public in 2014, and I became a Baha'i in 2015.
Okay. So what were, before you became a member of the Baha'i faith, where did your values and beliefs come from at that time?
I was raised as a Reformed Jew, so I'm sure I got some of my values from my Jewish faith, from my parents, maybe some from society. I don't think my values, and especially if you know a little bit about the Baha'i faith, are diametrically opposed to Reformed Jews. In fact, my sisters and my mother, my father, and I have pretty similar values. They all consider themselves Jewish, and I'm Baha'i. So I think from a Baha'i perspective, the main values of all the major faiths are pretty similar. There's some differences in the social laws and teachings. And with the Baha'i faith, the real emphasis on oneness, but the idea of being honest and kind and truthful, just, should be and are really at the center of all the faiths.
Okay, great. The next question, what motivated you to keep going while you were building your business?
I am a runner. I've been a runner since 12 years old. So I have a naturally very persistent personality. I have a lot of steadfastness. I don't stop. So I've run 3 marathons, which is not great because I'm 6'6". I'm a little bit too big to be a marathon runner. But I tend to always keep going. And when I started my business, I had a lot of confidence, probably more than I do now, just because when you're younger, you think you know everything. But I was pretty confident that the business was going to succeed. I had some dark days, I had some challenges, and I just always assumed everything would turn out okay. And it did.
One thing I meant to ask you, Steve, and I want to ask you now before I forget again, what's the correct pronunciation of your last name?
Smith.
I never would have guessed that. My guess would be Sarowitz.
Sarowitz.
Sarowitz. Okay, I got it wrong. Okay, glad I asked.
but that's okay. I mean, you could pronounce it Sarowitz or anything like that. Like I said, I would have preferred Smith, but they stuck me with Sarowitz.
Okay, got it. All right, so our next question, how did you know getting into this business venture, how did you know getting into this business venture that it would change your life?
I didn't. You know, my accountant I told me I worked for two other payroll services that had sold out, actually three, and but just recently before I started my business, there were two that had sold out for millions of dollars, and my accountant just said, "You were the one who ran sales for each of these last two businesses. Why don't you go make money for yourself?" And that's all I did. I think I just maybe overshot the mark a little bit. I did not know it was going to be this life changing.
Okay. That's a good
I'd have
lesson.
been happy making $5 million. I'd been happy making $1 million. I mean, I had almost nothing.
Right. Okay. And what made you want to start a payroll related firm?
Because I've been in the business. That's because I've done very well as a salesperson and a sales manager at other payroll companies, which is why I said, you know, do something you know is that's a good thing.
Right. Okay. So then we have a couple technology related questions. How has technology helped you reduce cost within your business?
Well, my company is a technology company. So we built our own proprietary software and we put a lot of efficiencies in it. And so because we put a lot of efficiency in our engine, that reduced our costs greatly. It makes our payrolls more accurate. It saves us a lot of time in customer service and also in production as well.
What are some
One
of
of
the
the things,
Oh, go
one of
ahead.
the things we did many years ago is we started pushing paperless payroll, so we didn't have to print so much, which is very good for the environment and also very good cost-wise and efficiency-wise.
Okay, makes sense. And what are some of the benefits of using Paylocity for your clients?
We are, and I'm not just saying this because I'm the chairman, we're the best mid-market payroll service, and the mid-market being like 50 to 500 employees. We have the best product out there. It's very comprehensive. It's easy to use. Our service is excellent. We've been the fastest growing payroll company publicly held for the last 9 quarters. So obviously the market thinks we're doing pretty well. Although our stock hasn't shown that way. Our stock has been, I'd say, has not gone up as fast as we've grown. But we've grown from the time we went public. Just to give you an idea, in 2014 we went public. We were doing 100 million in revenue. This year we're projected at 1.4 billion. And this year, well, last quarter we grew 25% year over year. I think the previous year we grew 35% year over year, and so, or actually over 35%. So, for a company that's our size, we're still growing at a pretty good clip.
Okay, and so if I understand correctly, the target market is really mid-sized businesses?
Yes, we're
Okay.
not the best at the small market. We're not the best at the large market.
Okay, I think there's a lesson there too. It's important not only to get into an industry, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, an industry that you're familiar with, but also figure out who your target market is and focus on their needs. There's a question now about how secure is your service, I think meaning Paylocity's, cybersecurity. What can you tell us about that?
I'm not an expert on that, but I would tell you we spend a lot of money making it secure, and it's very important for us to be secure. I will say that there's no such thing as perfect cybersecurity. I have one other thing to say about cybersecurity, and that is I look at cybersecurity as actually an act of war. And the reason is that almost all of the cybercrime comes out of just a handful of countries, and they're the countries you'd expect, like China and Iran and Russia and North Korea. And so I actually look at the cybersecurity or the cybercrime that we see as an act of war. And at some point in time, I think it will be dealt with that way.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense to me, looking around the world and seeing the types of attacks. Our college here actually was the victim of a ransomware attack about a year ago, and we've not fully recovered. It's been a long process because our data got taken for ransom. Fortunately, I had my data backed up, but a lot of instructors did not and lost everything for all their courses. So it was a lesson learned.
Again, going back to my faith, our faith, there's no way you could ever be a Baha'i and do anything like that. Of course, you couldn't be a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Jew, or any religion and ever commit a cybercrime. So it's people without faith who are doing that. And it's very important for the world to have faith, to really have the lessons taught in every major religion, so we can do away with things like that. We actually, ultimately, it will, once we reinstill the world, basically inspire the world with faith, we'll do away with all crime, including cybercrime, but not limited to it.
Right. That gets back to the ethics and social responsibility that we've talked about here in class as well.
We are primarily spiritual beings, and so anything we do, it really has to do with our soul. I mean, we live on this earth for just a short period of time, and while we're here, this is according to the Baha'i writings, we're kind of in a womb for our soul. We're developing our soul much like a baby, a fetus develops in their mother's womb. And so if we've done a poor job of developing our soul, we're born into the next world really deficient, and we haven't achieved our purpose here in this one. It doesn't matter how rich you are.
Now, so that gives me a question. I'm sure you've met other highly successful tech entrepreneurs like yourself, maybe other billionaires. How many of them share this kind of worldview that we're spiritual beings when they've reached the pinnacle of material success?
There's a saying in the Baha'i faith, and I'm going to paraphrase it. It's from the Hidden Words of Baha'u'llah. But essentially, the rich but for a few shall not attain the presence of God. And the wealth can be a very big barrier to spiritual success. I was very lucky to find the faith when I did. I would say that most people on my level are not thinking about spirituality to the level that I do. Some are. There are some, but a lot are more thinking about how to make more and how to make more money. And I'm thinking, well, if you've got a couple $1 billion, a few $1 billion, $1 billion, $500 million, I mean, any kind of number like that, I don't understand why you care about making more money. At that point, it's you've made enough money. Let's move on to the next phase.
Okay. So it sounds like you're really grounded in your values and you haven't let your wealth distract you from a self-actualized life.
I would agree with that. Yes. Well, to me, I just recognize that the wealth isn't that important.
Right. Okay. Well, we then have some questions on entrepreneurial methods. Steve, how much more time do you have with us this morning?
I can give you a few more minutes, no problem.
Okay. Well, let me go through these questions, and if anyone else has burning questions they'd like to ask beyond what was submitted in advance, if there's time, maybe we'll be able to fit those in as well. So a question here is, what methods help on the way to the top?
Number one, when you're starting, don't spend too much money. I've seen businesses fail, and a lot of times if they're over leveraged, that's a problem. So save money for a rainy day. Don't be fancy. Most businesses are like babies when they start. They should be treated that way. You should put your resources into them. You don't want to act like you're a big business, right? When you're a small business, it has to grow, and then be ready to tack if you need to. So one thing I do well, I would tell you, I'm not a great manager of people. I'm not a great professional manager, but I'm a good entrepreneur, and a good entrepreneur knows when they have to switch directions. So you should be prepared to switch directions very quickly if you're an entrepreneur. If something's not working, Don't get too attached to ideas, and don't get too attached be ready to switch and to iterate through. All the great entrepreneurs do that.
Now,
If
you
really
said
rethink that.
you're not the best people manager, so then you look for people that can do that for you and let them handle that task?
And in general, I would say look for somebody in everything that does the task better than you. One of the pitfalls that will kill your career and kill your business if you're an entrepreneur is thinking that you do everything well. Find things you don't do well, and then find someone else to do those things. Do the things you do well that you love to do, and then find someone else. If you do everything well, first of all, you're lying to yourself, and second of all, you're missing your ability, a chance to get someone better doing that thing.
All right, the next question. How do you learn to embrace risk taking?
That's just built into me. I'm always a risk taker.
Are they calculated risks or just like crazy wild risks?
I've done both. I've done better with the calculated risks.
Okay. Well, that's a nice segue to the next question. What mistakes do you regret?
Oh, let's see. Well, opening a Chinese restaurant was a pretty good one. I've made some bad investments over time. I've invested in businesses I didn't know anything about. In one case, I lost over $10 million. I'd say one of the things I've done consistently in my career is firing someone too slowly. I think you should hire slowly and fire quickly. So I've made bad hiring decisions, and I have made even worse lack of firing. I remember one person I should have fired months before I did. And at the time, there were 4 people running the business. He was one of them. It was very small. The other two people running the business came to me and said, he needs to go, otherwise we're going to go, which means I waited way too long to let him go.
Interesting. Okay. Let's see. Are there any advantages or disadvantages for a veteran to start up a business?
I don't know. I'm not a veteran. But
Okay.
I think that there's probably some funding you can get as a veteran.
Yeah, there are programs for veterans and disadvantaged veterans specifically, especially if you're bidding on government contracts. So, but that you just haven't had much encounter with any programs or services like that.
It's not been my focus, but I certainly hope there are advantages for veterans for their service. And then even more so, I hope that there'll be a day when there are no veterans because we have no more war.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the last official question, unless I've missed any along the way, and my students are pretty good at pointing out if I skip something. Is there anything, did I miss any of the questions? Did anybody notice? No? Okay. So this last official question here, would you say good daily habits play a tremendous role in your life in terms of a balanced lifestyle and productivity?
I think it's important to take care of your physical health and your spiritual health. So I meditate every morning. I pray every day. I eat pretty well, and I exercise. Today I ran about 2.5 miles, and I worked out with a trainer. I've been running for 45 plus years now. So and swimming. So I think it's good if you're not physically, and you guys are mostly probably pretty young, so it doesn't matter as much. But as you get to be my age, it matters a lot more. And I think treating people well makes your life a lot easier. Being honest with people makes your life a lot easier because I don't have to worry about who I lied to. And I think because people trust me, because people trust me and maybe even like me, I always have a lot of people coming at me with good ideas. Finding good investments is not a problem for me because of that.
Okay, so I think those are all the official questions. If any students have other questions they've come up with, do you have some more time, Steve?
Sure.
Okay.
Your questions.
All right. Well, we do a lot of coming up with questions in this class. That's one thing I've really tried to implement in my class is instead of me always giving answers, the students are asking questions that I don't even answer. But just the practice of coming up with questions, I think, causes us to really think through a topic. So who's got some other questions that they would like to ask Steve while we still have him on the line with us? Oh, yes. Can you come over here, Isaiah, a little bit closer and go ahead and ask your question? Yeah, the microphone's right here. So just, you should be fine right there.
How do you make a business go from private to public?
So you have to take it public. First of all, you need to have the right revenue and profits and growth. Paylocity was a very fast growing business for many years, 30–40% growth a year. We hit 100 million in revenue. So typically to go public, you're going to have to hit a certain amount of revenue and growth and have prospects. And Paylocity was really was in retrospect, a very good company to go public because the people invested, its stock price, when it went public, I think we went public at 17, and now we're almost 10 times that. And we've always, in fact, to be honest, our stock has gone down a lot recently, and it's from a multiple perspective, it's about as low as it's been almost ever. And yet we're still almost 10 times when we started 2014. So it's been a good investment. So you look for a company that has growth prospects so the investors can make money. You can't just start a company typically and take it public the next day. Now, the process of going public, you have to go on a roadshow and you have to attract investors. And that's what we did. You have to get banks who are willing to underwrite it. It's an interesting process.
And now you said you're serving as chairman of the board of directors.
Yes.
And just out of curiosity, how much time does that take up for you out of your schedule?
4 nights and 4 days. Actually 4 half days. So about 4 days a year.
A year, okay. So 4 days a year, okay. That's manageable. So basically,
manageable.
The quarterly meetings of the board.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll tell you a little story. So I hired Steve Beauchamp, who's our CEO. And after a few years, he comes to me. I'd hired him as president. He says, "I'm CEO now. I'm going to be CEO. You have to figure out a new title for yourself." And so I went to my friend. I was very upset. I said, "I'm CEO. What do I do if I'm CEO? If he becomes CEO?" And my friend said, "Do you still own the company?" At the time, I owned over 50% of the company. I said, "Yeah, I own the company." And he said, "Well, it doesn't matter what you call yourself. Call yourself founder and chairman." So I changed my title to founder and chairman, made him CEO. He told me at the time that he needed to be CEO because he was doing the job and I wasn't, and he was a good CEO and I wasn't. All of those things were true, and that nobody in their right mind would actually hire me as a CEO, which is also true. So now he's down to co-CEO. He's got a co-CEO, and I can see the writing on the wall that he's going to want to become chairman pretty soon. So I asked him about it. I said, "Steve, looks like you're going to become chairman pretty soon. What am I going to do?" He said, "The same thing you do right now, nothing." So he's right. I don't do much of anything. We like it that way, both of us. So it's really, we have a great relationship. Steve and I have been friends for many years. He was my friend before I hired him. I have great respect for the work he's done. And it's very good, actually, that I don't get very involved in the business, because when he first started, it was everything I did caused him a problem. I'd say hello to someone in the hall, and then the next thing would say, "What did you say to that person?" And I would be, "Well, I didn't say anything to them. What did they tell you I said?" And there was a lot of people who maybe misinterpreted what I said or tried to play Steve and I off against each other. So I purposely removed myself from the business so he could have really more autonomy.
Wow.
And it's given me an opportunity to do things like make movies and do philanthropy and do other things in life.
Great. Well, I tell my students, be careful when you go into business with friends and family members. It can work out, but sometimes it doesn't. So it's great that this friend is still a friend and that you have such a good working relationship.
Yeah, my college roommate, Dan, and I were partners in the business. And like I said, he did very well. He's worth hundreds of millions. I'm worth billions. So we both did okay from it. And We were friends and business partners for 20 years, 15, 20 years, 15, almost 20 years.
And
Actually, I think
what was that, Steve?
I think we're partners and friends for 20 years until we sold Blue Marble.
And what do you think has allowed you to remain friends and business partners so successfully?
I think I'm pretty honest in my business dealings. I think it'd be a lot harder. I've seen things where people are not that way, where they're more, they're trying to scheme. I can think of one guy in particular who actually probably the only person I ever sued, or one of the very few people I sued. And at the time I sued him, he was in something like 4 separate lawsuits because he was a very dishonest person. So I think if you're honest and forthright and you respect people and treat them well, you can have very good long-term relationships, and it makes life a lot easier. And as you can see by my success, I think that contributed to my success, that I had people who were with me for a long time.
Great. What other questions are out there for Steve? I don't want you to leave and then think, oh, I should have asked him this question and I didn't. Okay, Miguel. Okay, if you're really loud, it'll pick up.
Is it important to invest towards your business to start before you start a business?
What do you mean invest?
Well, like invest a lot of money ahead before starting a business?
Into your own business?
Into your own business, yes.
Okay, so how important is it to put your own money into your business when you're starting it up?
Well, I think it depends, really. It doesn't really matter. But if you don't put your own money into the business, then someone else will own it. Unless someone just wants to give you money, which is very unusual. The more successful businesses, generally, you have at least some of your own money in it. But
Right.
there are businesses that are started where other people do a lot of the investing in. But that can be a little bit harder route.
Yeah, when you put your own money in, you're kind of, you've got some skin in the game too, right? That might be a motivator, as opposed to just relying on other investors, and then, you're dealing with other people's money, right? So it might help drive you forward and make you determined. Hopefully you'd be responsible enough, whether it's your money or somebody else's, that you would be responsible with it either way.
Answering to investors can be hard, especially when you're first starting out and you're iterating through everything. So having your own money in is very good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what other questions are out there? Robert, you probably have a question. No? Yes.
How has faith affected the way you do business?
How has
Your faith affected
your faith? How has your faith affected the way you do business?
It's affected a lot recently in that I put my values in every business. So one of our values is consultation. Another one is diversity. So we have a very diverse staff. Every company that I'm with has a very diverse staff. We ask people to hold these values. So one of the values is we don't do any backbiting. So we don't talk badly about people behind their back. Honesty is very important, integrity. So we tell people right up front, this is who we are. And we had one person that worked for me that no longer works for me. When we started talking about the oneness of humankind and that everybody deserved respect, that person didn't agree and actually no longer works for me. So it's been actually very helpful to run businesses where people are values aligned. And what's interesting is, so I started a movie theater this last year. People notice it when they come in, that they notice a difference in the atmosphere. So I really think it's very positive from a business perspective to run businesses this way. I'm still pretty new at it, but I really think there's a huge advantage to putting your values out there very publicly and making sure that everybody has the same values.
Now, you mentioned your Wayfarer Foundation and you have Wayfarer Studios. So it's interesting. You also decided to make a movie theater, right? As well.
Yes.
And do you show, what type of films do you show in your movie theater?
We show uplifting, inspiring, and educational films. So my landlord came to me and said there's a movie theater in the complex, which we knew about, and they're not doing so well. They went out of the business, and he thought we would take over the space and maybe do something else with it. And instead, I said, no, keep it a theater. We'll keep it as a theater. It was a money-losing theater. So now, instead of someone else owning the money-losing theater, I get to own the money-losing theater, which apparently is a good thing. But what I'm learning how to run a theater, and to me, it's really valuable. We also have our own films at Wayfair. We have about 10 films in production right now, in various forms of post-production, etc. And so, as those films get ready and get finished, we could show them in our theater.
Okay, your theater's in Illinois?
Island Park, Illinois.
Okay. I think my mom used to live there way back in Highland Park. Now, something you don't know probably about me is one of the executives of Wayfarer Studios is Jamie Heath, right? And I grew up with Jamie Heath, so that's a connection. Even though I just met you recently, Steve, Jamie and I go back. I think I met him when I was about 15 or 16.
I'm sorry to hear that.
He's a very talented and creative individual, Jamie.
And he's doing a great job as president.
Yeah.
What I say about Jamie and Justin, my other partner, is that I would rather be in a foxhole with them. That's an old term some of you may not know. I'd rather have lots of trouble with them than have good times with somebody I didn't like.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, they're both amazing people. All right. Other questions for Steve? This is your chance. I think the questions that were submitted were very insightful and thoughtful, and I didn't edit them. They were basically directly out of your own mouths. So thank you for coming up with really good questions for Steve. Are there any remaining questions? Christian?
When you open a company and you have to open up a factory, how big should you build it? How many workers should you have, and where should you locate it at?
Could you hear that, Steve?
I heard all of it, and I can't answer any of it because when you open up a factory, it depends on what you're making. Some factories are big, some are small. And factories are extremely capital intensive. So you don't just open up a factory. So I would say you'd need to have customers before you opened up a factory. I mean, I've invested in factories, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. But to open up a factory, you need to have customers for your products. And there's all sorts of different size factories. And it all depends on what you're making. I mean, it all depends on the industry and what you're making.
Okay, good question, Christian. Another one from Zay. Go ahead.
What stock should we invest in?
What stock should we invest in?
Well, I can't talk about Paylocity because that would be insider trading, and I don't know much about other stocks. So unfortunately, I'm not the type of person. The only thing I would tell you is try to invest in a stock that is underlying intrinsic value. I was never a fan of cryptocurrency, and it's turned out to not be that solid. Because I don't think it has any underlying intrinsic value.
Okay, so make sure the stock has intrinsic value. Yes, go ahead, Zay.
What's intrinsic value?
What's intrinsic value?
So a company that has a really good business that's actually making money, that's profitable and growing. So sometimes things are just fads, and you'll see this sometimes that stocks are worth a lot of money in the company. And I've seen this with some of the EV manufacturers, and I would not invest in them because they're losing money, and I wouldn't, and they're very expensive. Like I'll pick on one company right now, and I think it's a very valuable company. Tesla is a very valuable company, but I wouldn't invest in Tesla because I think that they're so highly valued. I mean, there's actually not the value anywhere near the value in the company that I haven't looked at it recently. Last time I looked at it, the company was just worth a lot more money than its revenue would indicate.
Mhm. So buy for value.
Yeah, buy a company that's got decent profits and decent revenues, decent growth, and look for a company that might be slightly undervalued.
Okay. I know we have a couple students here who are interested in marketing, like Aubrey and Victoria. Do you have any questions for Steve? Marketing related or general?
Did you start marketing for Velocity?
Can you say it a little louder?
How did you start getting clients and marketing for Velocity?
So how'd you find your clients for Paylocity?
I did it through sales, not marketing. We actually were underpowered in marketing for many, many years. I would say we're still playing catch up. We've never been a great marketing company. We're a pretty solid sales company, but I'm not the best person to ask about marketing because that's not my expertise.
So it was more personal sales with salespeople?
Yeah, I actually didn't hire a salesperson for a couple of years. It took, I think I hired my first salesperson when I'd been in business 2 or 3 years.
So you were doing the sales on your own?
Yes.
Okay.
Saved a lot of money that way.
And the fact that you already had connections in the industry, was that helpful in getting started?
Hugely helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, we've taken up nearly an hour of your time, Steve. Any final questions here while Steve's still on the line with us? Oh, yes, Christian.
And if I switch your product to make it whiskey, could you now answer the question or no?
If you switch, oh, like for the factory?
Yeah.
What you can ask Steve. I'm interested to hear his response. So if the product were whiskey, then what does it take to make a factory?
Well, I wouldn't make a whiskey factory, so I don't drink alcohol, nor as a Baha'i can I sell alcohol. So I'm the worst person to ask that question.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any other hands going up. Okay. But I'm glad you've driven safely this whole time, Steve. It shows that being able to multitask is important for entrepreneurs. And really want to thank you again for taking the time and sharing your wisdom and your insights with us.
It has been completely my pleasure. I wish you guys good luck. And one last thing is, don't be afraid to fail. You learn a lot from failure. So especially when you're young, take a risk and try to make it a calculated risk, but don't be afraid to fail. That's how you learn.
Okay. Well, let's end on those important notes. Don't be afraid to fail, but make it a calculated risk. Very, very wise. And thank you so much, Steve. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Regards to Elise, to your wife. I hope to meet someday. And really appreciate your efforts and your willingness and suggestion that you could come and meet with us and give us your time.
My pleasure. Have a great day. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.